You think this place is yours to give away? Pack your things. The bank owns it now. When a deadly storm forced hundreds to flee, Roy Chase didn't hesitate. He gave them shelter, no questions asked. But kindness has a price. By morning, he had lost everything. What he didn't know was that fate had one last twist in store. One that would change everything in ways he never imagined. Let's begin the story. Roy Chase was a 58-year-old manager of the Silver Pine Inn, one of the last family-owned motels along Route 17. Unlike the polished chain hotels nearby, the Silver Pine held a timeless charm, a place where truckers found clean beds and families could afford a decent night's rest. Its flickering neon sign had been guiding travelers since the early 1960s. But 20 years ago, Roy's life was nothing like this. He was a successful insurance executive in Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder with a six-figure salary and a lifestyle that many envied. His days were filled with high-profile deals, power lunches, and exclusive parties. His nights, however, were empty, filled only with shallow business connections and restless ambition. The only break from his fast-pacing life came during brief visits to see his brother Mark at the Silver Pine Inn. Mark had inherited the motel from their parents, choosing a quiet life of service over the corporate success Roy pursued. Whenever Roy visited, Mark would greet him with a beer and a joke about how the city hadn't chewed him up yet. They'd sit on the motel's creaky porch, reminiscing about their childhood spent playing hide-and-seek between the rooms while their parents worked the front desk. Mark never cared about wealth. To him, the Silver Pine was a legacy built from their parents' blood, sweat, and dream. It was where they'd grown up, and Mark's contentment with its simple life was something Roy never quite understood. But then Mark died suddenly of a heart attack. The call came too late, leaving Roy to grapple with guilt and regret over the years he'd wasted chasing success instead of cherishing his brother's company. When Roy returned for the funeral, the motel felt worn and forgotten, its peeling paint and cracked asphalt mirroring the debt Mark had been drowning in. Developers were already circling, ready to turn the property into a luxury resort. The logical choice would have been to sell and return to his lucrative job in Chicago, but walking through the creaky halls of the Silver Pine, Roy couldn't abandon what his family had built. It was their parents' dream. Mark's legacy. Selling it would be like erasing their entire history. So, Roy did the unthinkable. He quit his job, sold his upscale apartment and luxury car, and poured everything he had into saving the Silver Pine. He moved into room 15, the same place where he and Mark had grown up, playing hide-and-seek between the rooms while their parents worked the front desk. The locals knew the Silver Pine's story well, how the Chase family had built it in 1962 with their life savings, turning a dusty patch of land along Route 17 into a welcoming haven for travelers. The motel had always been more than just a business. It was a symbol of hospitality and compassion. Roy's parents had made sure of that. They'd created a place where everyone felt welcome, regardless of their status or wealth. Truckers with tight budgets, single mothers escaping bad situations, young couples chasing dreams on limited cash, everyone who needed a place to stay was met with kindness and understanding. Even after the big chains arrived, taking most of their business, the Silver Pine maintained its reputation for kindness. "That Roy Chase," Sam Carter from the diner would say with a nod of approval. "He's just like his daddy was." Last month, when that family's car broke down, he let them stay 3 nights free while their transmission got fixed. "Don't make motels like that anymore." The Silver Pine wasn't fancy. Just 30 rooms in a U-shaped building around a cracked asphalt parking lot. Its faded green paint peeled at the corners and the wooden railings creaked with age. But despite its weathered appearance, the motel held a quiet charm that the big chains could never replicate. It was a piece of American history, one of the last old-school motels where the personal touch mattered more than the polished finish. The neon sign out front had been blinking vacancy since the Kennedy administration, its red and blue lights a beacon for weary travelers seeking a clean bed without the steep price tag. The lobby was small but cozy, with mismatched chairs Roy had refurbished himself, a rickety coffee table littered with magazines nobody read, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the pot Roy kept on throughout the day. But times were tough. The Silver Pine's charm could only carry it so far. The big chain hotels along Route 17 offered lower rates and modern amenities Roy could never afford to match. Developers kept circling like vultures, dangling generous offers in front of him to sell the place and walk away with more money than he'd ever seen in his life. The bank wasn't any kinder. The monthly mortgage payments kept rising, the interest piling up faster than Roy could scrape together, enough to make ends meet. Bills stacked up on the office desk and his savings were long gone. In the end, Roy had even sold his house to keep the motel afloat, moving into room 15 to save money. Still, he never lost his smile or his willingness to help others. Everything changed the night Hurricane Laura hit. The storm wasn't supposed to come inland. The forecasts had promised nothing more than heavy rain and strong winds. But Hurricane Laura defied every prediction, its rage swelling as it tore through the coastline, leaving devastation in its wake. By the time it reached the small town along Route 17, it was a monstrous force of nature, rain slashing sideways like knives, winds howling with a fury that ripped shingles from roofs and snapped power lines like threads. The sky was an angry shade of black, thunder rumbling so fiercely it shook the ground beneath Roy's feet. The news stations had been broadcasting warnings all evening, but it wasn't until the water started creeping over the banks of the local river that panic truly set in. Evacuation orders went out too late. Roads were swamped, mudslides cut off entire neighborhoods, and desperate families found themselves trapped with nowhere to go. Around midnight, Roy heard someone pounding on the office door. A family of 5 stood there, soaking wet, their car filled with everything they could save from their flooded home. Without hesitation, Roy gave them room 6, his best unit. "Don't worry about payment," he said, seeing the father reach for his wallet. "Just get your family dry and safe." More headlights appeared through the rain, 2 more cars, then 3. Each carried similar stories: flooded homes, blocked roads, nowhere to go. The town's designated shelter was already full. By 2 a.m., every room at the Silver Pine was occupied, many holding multiple families. Roy opened the motel's small breakfast room, a cozy little area meant to serve a dozen guests at most. But tonight it was packed wall to wall, with evacuees huddling for warmth. Mothers rocked restless children in their arms, trying to soothe them with whispered reassurances. Fathers stared helplessly at their phones, unable to get a signal to check on loved ones left behind. Despite the chaos, Roy's instincts kicked in. He brewed pot after pot of coffee, the rich aroma wafting through the air, offering a small but welcome comfort. It was something familiar, something warm, and the people clung to it like a lifeline. He gathered every spare blanket, pillow, and towel he could find. The old linen closet behind the front desk was nearly empty by the time he finished handing everything out. Even his own room was stripped of bedding, Roy's thin mattress left bare and cold. But he didn't care. The comfort of the evacuees mattered more. Some of the guests had fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs. An elderly couple clung to each other in the corner of the room, their faces pale and drawn. They had forgotten their medications in the frantic rush to evacuate, their breaths shallow and uneven. A young pregnant woman sat hunched over in a wooden chair, her face twisted in pain. Her contractions had started early, triggered by the stress of the storm and the panic of trying to escape. Her husband hovered beside her, his hands trembling as he tried to comfort her. "Mr. Chase?" a woman's voice called out from the hallway. Roy turned to see Sarah Collins from room 8. He remembered checking her in 2 nights earlier, a nurse who'd been working overtime at the local hospital before the flood swept through her neighborhood. "I can help with medical checks if you have a first aid kit," Sarah offered, her expression grim but determined. Roy wasted no time. He retrieved the dusty first aid kit from the office, something his mother had insisted on keeping well-stocked years ago. He handed it to Sarah, who immediately set to work, her calm efficiency soothing some of the tension buzzing through the room. Throughout the night, Silver Pine was no longer just a motel. It had become an impromptu emergency center. Truckers who'd been staying there shared their food, sandwiches, chips, snacks they'd stashed away for long hauls. Families squeezed tighter to make room for new arrivals. Roy worked tirelessly, coordinating everything from his office while keeping an eye on the weather radar on his old computer. Dawn brought the full impact of his decision into focus. Every one of the motel's 30 rooms held evacuees, over 100 people total. None had been charged. The morning news showed the devastation. Roads washed out, homes underwater, power lines down across 3 counties. "Roy!" Sam Carter called from the diner, wading through knee-deep water to bring over hot food. "You're all over social media. People are calling you a hero." But Roy wasn't thinking about heroics when Mr. Lawson from the bank arrived later that morning. The banker's expensive suit looked out of place among the evacuees sharing coffee and borrowed clothes. "Chase, what's this I hear about you giving away rooms?" Lawson demanded, his voice carrying across the crowded parking lot. "You're already 3 months behind on payments. This is a breach of contract." Roy stood his ground, aware of all the eyes watching. "These people needed help, Mr. Lawson. I couldn't turn them away." "Not your decision to make anymore." Lawson thrust a paper into Roy's hands. "The bank's foreclosing. We have buyers interested in this property. You have until evening to clear everyone out." The news spread quickly among the evacuees. Many offered to pay, pulling out soggy wallets and water-damaged credit cards. But Roy knew it wouldn't matter. The bank had been waiting for an excuse to foreclose. 20 years of mortgage payments, his entire life savings, everything he'd sacrificed to keep his brother's legacy alive, gone in a moment of kindness. Sarah Collins organized people to help clean rooms. Truckers offered to drive families to other shelters. Even Sam Carter brought more food, refusing payment. "Your daddy helped my family once," he said gruffly. "Just paying it forward." As evening approached, Roy sat in his office looking at old photos of his parents and Mark. He had no regrets about helping people, but the weight of losing the motel, their motel, pressed heavy on his chest. That's when he heard it, the distinct rumble of heavy vehicles. At first he thought it was more evacuees, but the sound kept growing until the whole building seemed to vibrate. Military transport trucks began filling the parking lot, not one or two, but dozens, their headlights cutting through the dusk. National Guard vehicles, FEMA trucks, even a mobile medical unit. From the lead vehicle stepped a commanding figure in fatigues. "Mr. Chase," the officer called out. "I'm Colonel Daniel Hayes. That nurse you took in last night? She's my sister. But more importantly, she's part of our hurricane response team. When she couldn't reach her unit because of flooding, she coordinated emergency responses from your motel. You didn't just shelter evacuees, sir. You unknowingly hosted our entire Regional Emergency Operations Center." Roy stood speechless as more officers approached. Behind them, Mr. Lawson from the bank had reappeared, looking considerably less confident. Colonel Hayes continued, handing Roy official-looking documents. "These papers authorize immediate federal purchase of the property at 3 times market value. We need people like you, Mr. Chase, people who understand that some things matter more than money." The transformation began immediately. Military engineers assessed the property while medical teams set up proper aid stations. The evacuees watched in amazement as their temporary shelter became the center of a major relief operation. Today, the Silver Pine Inn stands proudly along Route 17, its old neon sign restored to perfect condition. The rooms modernized, but still carrying the same homey feel Roy's parents created. A new wing serves as an emergency response center, ready for the next crisis. But the original rooms still offer truckers and families the same warm welcome they always have. Roy still lives in room 15, now by choice rather than necessity. He keeps his parents' and Mark's photos on display in the office, next to a framed letter of commendation from the National Guard. He thought he was just running a motel, but some places are destined to be more than just walls and a roof. Because in the end, it's not the buildings we preserve, but the lives we touch along the way. One act of kindness can transform a moment into a movement, proving that compassion has the power to rebuild more than just homes. It rebuilds hope. If this story moved you, tap that like button and subscribe for more. Share one word in the comments that captures how this story made you feel. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in the power of good.